Imagine a house, old and creaky, with an attic no one dares to venture into. Nestled in a forgotten corner of a quaint little town, it's a place where time itself seems to have stood still. This is where our story begins. In this house lived a young girl, full of dreams and curiosity. Her eyes sparkled with the kind of innocence that only comes from an untouched spirit, an unbroken heart. Her grandmother, a woman of stern disposition and many secrets, was her only companion. The two shared a bond that was as beautiful as it was enigmatic. The grandmother had one rule, a rule that was as absolute as the sun rising in the east. The attic was forbidden. It was a place where the line between the real and the unreal blurred, a place of shadows and whispers. But to a young, inquisitive mind, a rule like this was akin to a moth being drawn to a flame. The attic, with its forbidden allure, began to consume the girl's thoughts day and night. The young girl, ever so curious, decided to break the rule one day. As the grandmother took her afternoon nap, the girl tiptoed her way up the creaky stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, the thrill of the unknown coaxing her onward. She had heard stories, tales spun by the townsfolk about the attic, of strange sounds that echoed in the dead of the night, of shadows that danced on the walls when the moon was full. Yet, she was not afraid. She felt a magnetic pull towards the attic, a pull that was both terrifying and exciting at the same time. As she turned the rusty knob and pushed the door open, she stepped into a world that was as alien as it was familiar. The attic was shrouded in a blanket of dust and cobwebs, untouched by time and human presence. Little did she know, her curiosity would lead her to an eerie discovery. Amongst the dust and cobwebs, a glint of gold caught her eye. Amidst the forgotten relics of bygone days, a chest, rich with time's patina, sat in stoic silence. It was an antique, a relic from another era, its once vibrant colors faded and muted by the relentless march of time. Its ornate carvings, though dulled by years of neglect, still retained a hint of their former glory. It was a beacon of intrigue, an invitation to a tale untold, waiting to be discovered amidst the attic's dusty gloom. As she approached the chest, her heart pounded with the rhythm of 1,000 galloping horses. The air around her seemed to tighten, her breaths became shallow, anticipation and excitement making her skin tingle. She hesitated for a moment, her small fingers tracing the intricate designs etched into the wood. But curiosity, that insatiable beast, gnawed at her restraint, coaxing her onward. With a deep breath, she lifted the heavy lid. A gust of stale air, trapped for decades, escaped into the attic, carrying with it a faint perfume of lavender and old paper. Her eyes widened as they fell upon a trove of shimmering gold. The pieces were delicately crafted, their surfaces etched with intricate designs that danced under the dim attic light. Each piece seemed to tell a story, a narrative of a time and place far removed from her own. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and picked up a golden locket. It was heavy, colder than she had expected. As she held it, she could almost feel it pulsate, like a heartbeat frozen in time, waiting to be revived. The locket was an enigma, a tantalizing puzzle begging to be solved. She held it closer, her breath hitching as she touched the cold metal, her reflection staring back at her from the polished surface. It was a moment of triumph, a secret shared between her and the forgotten past. In her hands, she held the forbidden treasure, unaware of the visions it would unveil. As she touched the gold, the room seemed to spin, her vision blurred, and then she saw her. A swirl of images flooded her mind. The young girl found herself immersed in a world far removed from her own. It was her grandmother's world. But this was not the kindly old woman she knew. This was a younger, harsher version. Her eyes, once filled with warmth, were now cold and calculating. Her face, once lined with laughter, bore expressions of fear, anger, and mistrust. The gold in her hands shimmered. Each glint seemed to reveal another scene from her grandmother's past. She saw her grandmother, a young woman, her face pale in the moonlight, hastily burying something in the ground. Another vision showed her standing in a crowd, her eyes wide with fear, as a house in the distance was consumed by flames. The scene shifted. Her grandmother was now older, the lines of worry etched deep into her face. She was arguing with a man, his face obscured by shadows, their words filled with anger and accusations. The visions morphed once more, showing her grandmother in what seemed like a different life. A life filled with secrets, danger, and a constant sense of dread. She saw her grandmother handing over a mysterious package to a stranger. She saw her hiding, her face filled with terror, as she watched men in dark suits approach her home. With each vision, the young girl felt a growing unease. This was not the grandmother she knew. This was a woman who lived in constant fear. A woman who had secrets that were dark and dangerous. The gold in her hands felt heavier. Its shine seemed to mock her with its hidden truths. Suddenly the vision stopped. The room was still. The gold lay innocently in her hands. But the images were seared into her mind. The echo of her grandmother's fear still resonated within her. As the visions faded, she was left with a chilling feeling of dread. Shaken, she tried to make sense of what she had seen. The girl felt a chill run down her spine, her mind a whirlwind of images too dreadful to comprehend. The gold, that gleaming symbol of wealth and prosperity, had become a curse, revealing a history she wished she could unsee. Her grandmother, always a figure of warmth and love, was now shrouded in mystery and terror. The visions had painted her in a new disturbing light. A young woman, a time of war, a choice made out of desperation. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly falling into place, but they formed a picture too horrific to accept. She was afraid, yes, but more than that, she was confused. How could her sweet, kind grandmother be involved in such a ghastly tale? She remembered the soft lullabies her grandmother used to sing, the homemade cookies she loved to bake, the comforting embrace that made all her fears disappear. Yet the visions were undeniable, and they were growing more vivid and terrifying with each passing moment. She tried to brush them aside, to convince herself that it was all a figment of her imagination. But the gold, still glinting ominously from the chest in the attic, was a constant reminder of the dark secret she had unwittingly uncovered. The implications of what she had seen were horrifying. She felt a sense of dread creeping in, a feeling of being trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. She was caught in a web of fear and uncertainty, the lines between reality and the supernatural becoming increasingly blurred. She realized that she couldn't keep this to herself anymore. The burden was too heavy, the secret too dark to bear alone. She had to confront her grandmother, to seek answers to the questions that were haunting her. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. With a heavy heart and a resolve born out of desperation, she made up her mind. The visions, the gold, the attic, it all pointed to a truth she was reluctant to face, but face it, she must. She knew one thing for sure. She had to confront her grandmother. With a heavy heart, she descended the attic stairs, the gold still clutched in her hand. Her mind whirled with the dark visions that had pierced her reality. The images of her grandmother, not as the sweet old woman she knew, but as a younger, more sinister figure, haunted her. The gold shimmered in her hand, seemingly innocent yet holding such terrifying secrets. Each step she took was a step towards confronting the woman who had loved and raised her. But now she was a stranger, a specter from the past she didn't recognize. Her heart pounded in her chest like a wild drum, echoing in the emptiness of the house. She could hear the old clock in the hallway ticking away, its steady rhythm a stark contrast to the turmoil within her. She could feel the cold metal of the doorknob beneath her fingers, the barrier that separated her from the truth. The truth about her grandmother, about her family, about herself. She could hear her grandmother humming a lullaby in the next room. A lullaby she used to sing to her when she was a child. It used to bring her comfort. Now it only added to her fear. She stood there, outside her grandmother's room, the haunting melody wrapping around her like a chilling breeze. The gold in her hand seemed to pulse with a life of its own. It was no longer just a precious metal. It was a key to a past she was unsure she wanted to unlock. But the truth has a way of making itself known, of demanding to be heard. And she knew she could no longer ignore it. She took a deep breath, her hand trembling on the doorknob. She could feel the weight of her decision, the enormity of the moment. And then, with a final surge of courage, she opened the door. She stepped into the unknown, armed only with a piece of gold and a heart full of dread. She took a deep breath, opened the door, and, well, you'll have to wait till next time to find out. Y'all, we're wrapping up here, but don't you go anywhere just yet. Show some love, hit that like button. Fancy more content like this? Go on, subscribe and let that bell icon ring so you won't miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sharing is caring. Until next time, stay tuned.